Okay, so now we've got, and I gotta move the map because it's hard for me to catch what's down there. Just my hand doesn't go there, but it's easier to play if I have that set up there. Now we have Aspern-Essling, and one thing you'll notice right away, this is going to be half the Wagram map. Now, Berg makes the point that this is not the right scale to do Aspern-Essling, but given that he was doing Wagram, most of the action is just going to happen right in here along the riverbank. This is from the 1809 campaign along the Danube. It runs basically from Aspern-Essling to Wagram, and some of the Archduke Charles's best fighting was done during this campaign. In particular, I think Aspern-Essling is the battle that Napoleon used to scoff at people about. Sometimes, maybe it was Wagram, but I think it was Aspern-Essling. People would make fun of the Austrians. Well, there was one anecdote. Someone made fun of the Austrians, and Napoleon said, "You weren't at Aspern-Essling. You know nothing." But both here at Aspern-Essling and at Wagram, the Austrian army is beginning to show a lot more life than it ever had before. Anyhow, there's two choices of games for this, a one-day version and a two-day version. I'm, of course, going to try the two-day version. I may call it early. Basically, it may call itself early, actually. It does have automatic victory conditions, and if those can be reached, that's reasonable. The initial deployment, I don't have everything set up. There's some French reinforcements that are from the Wagram game. Pretty much the units are the same because we're in the same time period, although there may be, you can see there's only a month between them, basically. There might be some changes in values that should be applied, but there's shared counters for many of the units. I think some of the more harshly used units here end up lower rated or not existing in Wagram. We'll see. Those units may or may not come into the game, though, because one of the key factors in Aspern-Essling is that Napoleon's reinforcement bridge was taken down. This bridge here, basically. And that's where all his troops are coming through. Oh wait, he has another one here. I think it was this one that went. I'm not sure. He's got a couple of bridges, but basically he could no longer get reinforcements across the river and decided to withdraw through the remaining bridge. There are a number of special rules here. Austrians start off with initiative. Archduke Charles. So he's an epileptic, and this being a Berg game, even though he wasn't affected by it in the battle, you have to make a check every time he makes a command roll. There's a chance that he's lying on the floor, not being very effective for a few hours, and resting afterwards. They also give Charles, he had a very lead from the front attitude. I didn't realize this. And so he's allowed to move with units that he's stacked with during their activations. He won't get his normal end of turn movement that way, if he does that. I think he's only allowed to move in one activation. No, you can move with it whenever it moves. Okay, during one activation marker in a turn, though, if a hex that Charles is present in makes an attack, the units there, or wishes to make an attack, the units there will be automatically committed to any combat, regardless of what their orders are. They subtract 2 from any cohesion die roll engendered by the combat. So they're going to have a higher morale. And if the die roll for if the cohesion die rolls for a unit in that stack end up as a 9, there's a chance Charles gets killed in that case. The Austrians can't use a reserve activation until 1515, I think is over here, where the 4th Corps comes in. They can never use that to activate the Grenadiers over here, who are in a special reserve status at the beginning of the game. Okay, stacking. So this is, there's 2 things in this scenario that led me to realize, wow, there's rules I didn't know or didn't remember. In this case, it's didn't remember, because I do remember having mentioned this and making the decision, I'm not going to bother. Basically, if all the units of a brigade are together, they can stack together as if they're in the normal 2 infantry, 2 cav limit. The problem is the brigade is this tiny little name here, and I can't ever read that, and it's going to be almost impossible for me to ever notice that. Although I guess if I really want to overstack units in a particular circumstance, I can try to search for it. But the problem is units are going to skew between, it gets scrambled up. Some of my starting units got scrambled up anyhow, because there are advantages to stacking stacking 2 even-numbered units or 2 odd-number units, because you want an even number for the strength of your unit, because it's more likely to get a 2-to-1 odds that way. I guess. Yeah, that's a little weird, but that's just the way the numbers work out. And quite often, you don't get that within 1 brigade. Often the units of a brigade are very similar, and it works fine. Other times, they're different values, and one's odd, one's even, and you're like, well, I don't want to stack these. Or another thing is, it's often good to cover a unit with a better unit, a higher quality unit. So often the units of the brigade are all the same quality, and you want to mix them with another brigade. This is ahistorical behavior to desire that as much as you do in this game, but you want that. I also find myself, so there's divisions as well, and this is a division. I think there's a couple of divisions here, and I find myself dividing up divisions. There's nothing that, promotes keeping divisions together. It shouldn't be too harsh, but in general the practice was to keep your divisions a certain cohesiveness there. There's an option for the historical opening, which I'm not going to play. It kind of pre-scripts the game, although I may play the first step of it, which is these guys running into Aspern. And I think they kind of have to. Like, if you don't do that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because of the victory conditions, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Nighttime. Okay, so here's where the other role comes. So there's a couple of night turns, because it's a 2-day battle. At least the long game is. It costs more to move adjacent to an enemy unit. Okay. Disordered units may not move adjacent. Wow, there's one. I thought that was the case anyway, and I'll have to look that up because I don't remember. I forgot about looking that one up. No artillery at range greater than 1 hex. +2 to cohesion die rolls. Disordered units that were not in an enemy zone of control and do nothing else will automatically rally. And you subtract 3, not the usual +1, from rally die rolls for routed units. Now I went looking and I found no indication, even in the Borodino rolls, of some +1 for routed units. The only thing that happened is routed units change. Routed units have a rule where if they reach double their disorder cohesion, they're removed from the board, which is a pretty rare occurrence. But there's no +1 there, and my thought is that maybe was some artifact left over from an earlier edition of the rules that never made it to print, and it just stayed in the scenario. And I'm not sure if there's anything I can do about it. The 2130 game turn with light rapidly fading allows only one activation marker per command. That would be here. The other night turns, I guess because there's so much, I guess they're longer or something, don't seem to have that penalty. So you're able to do everything with all your units at night. So I don't know. For the bridges, okay, basically each turn the Austrians roll a die, and on a 0 or 1 they have a chance of they'll break the bridge. If they break the bridge, the French get a chance to repair it. While it's broken, nothing can cross it. No reinforcements can cross it. Once we get to the next day, the bridge could be destroyed totally, and it's fairly likely to happen. And then the French are just out of luck. So the way the reinforcements enter in this game is they enter in pulses, and they're kind of stacked. Some of these are Austrians, but the French reinforcements are kind of pulsed here. By the way, this is the battle Lon dies in, or gets wounded, so he can't recover, and then dies. And each of the French reinforcement sets is scheduled in a particular order. So you don't have much flexibility. You don't have any flexibility in terms of what you bring in. And when you bring it in, everything else has to kind of wait for it. So there may be more units than you can bring in any one of these pulses, but you can only bring them in while the bridges are still up. And if the activation markers come out wrong, and they're all in the cup, you may end up not being able to bring anything in, because, for example, if this one gets activated, well, this guy would eventually, whoever's first in line, his shit's gonna eventually come up, I think. There's no trumping in this. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Alright, so here's something weird. Austrian mass battalion tactics. The Austrians have gotten very good at massing units to face down Cav. And what this gives is an advantage for Austrian units to enter square with a -2 to their die roll. However, given that I almost never did a Cav charge, and with the disorder in the second edition of the rolls, they become even less attractive. The main reason is because you have to set them up so carefully. The enemy can walk away if you get too close to their cav when you're in range to be charged. However, Cav's speed made it really good at hitting units from behind. But anyway, this ability to turn into square is a real advantage. And the design note, the French cav were used throughout the battle to halt the Austrian advances, and did so quite well, often at a high cost. The effect of the above DRM should produce this historical result. Yeah, maybe. If you can set up the cav charges, but I think the cav is... If a flank is exposed or something, the cav doesn't need to charge. But if I'm facing a frontal assault with cav, there's a pretty good chance that I'll want to charge, especially against bigger units. The Guards units. The French Imperial Guard, Napoleon's in direct command of the Guard. Because of the bridges and the failure of the Third Corps to arrive, Napoleon used his Guard quite freely. However, the Guard must be under orders to move. If under no order status, they may not move or shock. This is why they say nap on them. See, that's the kind of stuff. Some people hate it, but I like my... I don't know why their shit isn't in my pile. Oh, they don't come in yet. Okay. They come in at night. At the beginning of nightfall. I thought they were present already from what that said. The Austrian Grenadiers which is the force sitting over here in the town. That's Charles's reserve. They're not available for activation until the morning of the second day. And after that, they may be activated as any other command. The Hesse-Homburg cavalry, however, is treated normally. I don't know why that's a big deal. I guess they're part of the guard. Oh, no, that's the advanced guard. I don't know where the Hesse-Homburg... Oh, here's the Hesse-Homburg cavalry. I guess that was part of the grenadiers. It's not marked as such, though. It's marked as part of the Cav command here, so that's probably just a historical issue. Clenau's advanced guard, that's this unit here. These come from the 4th Corps. At the start of the first day, they can be reintegrated into the 4th Corps at the Austrian player's desire. Alright. What's this? Okay, Aspern and Essling have a number of advantages to them. The villages bounded by the flood wall. This is the flood wall. This thing coming around here have a cumulative effect with the defensive positions, the granary and the church here. They're each going to have, if I can find my charts, they must be over here. I'm going to need these to play. It's going to be hard to do Wagram. There's the flood wall, and then there should be, there's the village. Is it cumulative with the village, or is there a special space? I don't see something special for the church or the granary. Maybe I'm missing something. These are special hexes, though. They have other rules in them, don't they? Villages bounded by the flood wall. Okay, village hexes bounded by the flood wall have that. Jaegers cannot be used to affect the commitment die roll when attacking into a village from a non-village hex, which means the Austrians, I forget about this, the Austrian Jaegers are able to cut down the firepower used against them by the French skirmishers. Why does this say... You gotta be kidding. There's gotta be more video on here. I'll be back. Units defending in the church or the granary, if they get a 5 through 9 result on the combat results, which is the disorder with a retreat cohesion check, they can choose to either take the disorder or the retreat or an automatic retreat, but they don't take any other results from that. There's an elevated road, which I believe is this dashed line here along this road. That's really hard to see in this light, but you'll have to trust me. There's little caterpillar things there. It's probably used for communications between the cities when the Danube floods. It gave Napoleon a defensive wall, and the Austrians largely avoided it, although they did try to negate it by throwing some pontoons over it. That didn't work. It cannot be used as a road. That's going to be hard to remember, because it looks like a road. It's too thin, and the embankments are steep off of it, so you can't kind of just ooze over the road. Disrupted units cannot voluntarily cross it, and cavalry may not charge across it. There are also a bunch of ditches just all throughout this battlefield. There are various different types of ditches. And they've got one terrain type here. Let's see what they do. It's ditch ravines, some small effects, a shock bonus. And finally, there's some entrenchments, which are built after this battle and take effect for Wagram. So they won't. You can ignore them on the battlefield here. The French retreat towards 2743, which I think is this. However, in their first route movement phase, if they're within movement range of either Aspern or Essling, they may retreat into that village, but never adjacent to an enemy unit and never to stack with a non-routed unit. The Allies retreat to the nearest friendly village. And what this means is you're not going to be running off the map. You have a chance to rally at these points, and it makes route less important. Okay. So, the goal of this game is going to be to establish the beachhead, and that's going to be rather than to destroy the enemy like in most Napoleonic battles. The Austrians win if they control all of Aspern-Essling at the end of any turn. If in the one-day scenario, if the Austrians control either one at the end of the day, they win, but not overwhelmingly. The French win automatically if they control Aspern-Essling and Breitland, which I don't know where it is. Here's Aspern and Essling. Or the other way around. Oh, here's Breitland. So you got to push the Austrians well back. To qualify for a French victory. Not that there's much in the way of defensive terrain back here, but there's a lot of Austrians on the board. Historically, the French ended up holding out the first day, but withdrawing completely on the second, deciding that it wasn't worth sticking around. How many players withdraw in a war game voluntarily when they have a chance of winning? Yeah, not many. But if it looks hopeless, I'm going to try, right? Because I like that. A couple of the Austrian units are under reinforcement orders. Some of them are not allowed to be. Basically, Second Corps, all of it is, which means I don't have to expend an order movement for it. I can just march it along the road until it makes it where it is. And the advanced guard is also under these orders. Although they're kind of close, I'm going to want to deploy them pretty soon. But it allows me to move forward a little quicker as long as I don't get too close to the enemy. Alright, let's try to figure out what's wrong with the camera at this point. Well, screw me. Looks like the power didn't charge. No big shock there. I keep saying this. I thought I had it hooked up so that it would. Way of bending the wire. This has been, I'm getting to this very late. I usually manage to get more in the morning than I did today, and then didn't have any breaks, but that's okay. Nothing that I could use this for. Anyway, this game actually works pretty well when I have short breaks, but today I was doing tasks that didn't give me any. I think I'm actually going to expend one of my chits to throw the artillery barrage in, because it doesn't hurt the French. There aren't enough French corps on the map to assign them all of Napoleon's command ability, so might as well throw the artillery in. Am I allowed to coordinate it? I seem to remember I had something I'm allowed to use once. If it's the artillery barrage, I don't want to use that. I don't quite remember. We'll look it up. I certainly don't want to use it. That's the case, though. Artillery barrage as below. Yeah, where? some of this stuff is hard to find. So I seem to remember something happens once per day, and if it's the artillery, I sure the hell don't want to use it up at this point. Okay, so yeah, for the French there aren't enough commands. I would love to have split the 4th Corps into 2 different commands, but or maybe all 3, but I don't have that opportunity, and it's in disparate units. I don't know which ones I'm going to automatically activate and which ones I'm going to roll for, but they've got fairly good results. For the Austrians, I'm going to try to do the historical and throw this little bit of the 6th Corps into play. And I've got the 1st and 6th Corps, which is this force here, active, which means if I can get them all together or something, then well, it's only the 6th Corps that's kind of separated. Other units, these guys and these guys are under their entry march bonus, and I don't know. I'm gonna plug my camera back in because obviously it spent the whole day doing nothing. Strangely enough, the combined command is listed later in the rules as being available once per day for the French. The artillery there's no mention of. I'm going to give him the right to do the artillery barrage if he wants to expend a command on it. Usually that's not really a great advantage. I still haven't even looked up what the requirements are for it. For the first activation, I moved these forward a little bit. These guys went to where they're supposed to go for the historical variant, the opening. The one difference I saw is that these guys couldn't make it to the church. I said, hey, they should, because historically they did make it there. So if there's a mistake there, it might have been in my setup. I might have been too far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I might have been a hex short of where I could have set up and been able to get there somehow. And now we're into the normal play of things. So I moved forward Liechtenstein's cav and the advanced guard in their road movement rate, whatever. And I think I know what's going on here. So I see, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit of fuzziness around the road. I could have walked in via the road. It's this road that I thought it was, which has sort of this caterpillar tracking, but I saw the fuzziness and didn't really look to compare and thought it was that weird raised road. Right now I've got Messina that I have to move, and I think I'm going to trigger these guys to have the activation, the fully activated sense, and give everyone else kind of half movement. See if I can get it all into command if I can. But I need these guys to try to punch the advanced unit of the Austrians out. And that's all very historical. Actually, we're seeing everything kind of move forward in a very I go, you go type status because everything's come up singly. The artillery barrage came. I got one shot off here. You can see I did not take the church. Historically it was taken. And the reason for that was these guys didn't want to go in. And the Austrians have gotten a lot of activations kind of in a row here. And you can see they're coming forward. This is the cav screening this side, but in a couple big columns coming forward, and then the advanced guard over here, which really isn't terribly impressive. Like I said, it's part of one of their I think it's part of 4th Corps here. One weird thing, a little chunk of 1st Corps here. The 1st Corps and the 6th Corps, I have real trouble telling these apart. Now let's zoom in. These are different colors here, and you could say, well, that's obvious, and it is through the camera, but sometimes my lighting isn't very good, and sometimes I'm a little worried that I have a little bit of blue-green in here. Not being able to distinguish the two as well as I should. CA's heavy cav chased away the advanced guard's light cav. Attempted some artillery fire. Very, very light action so far now. And as we position out at the end of the turn, Lon He's moved in, he failed his assault here, and actually he's separated his forces again accidentally. The stuff in Aspern is not connected to the rest of his command, but it's tough to stretch across this kind of territory. Right now that's okay because I don't really need to attack out of Essling, but I do need to try to get him out of there, and you know, it doesn't look like it's happening. I've stiffened the line, got the cav in front here, and I've stiffened the line with some infantry behind it and a couple of strong points. Those are heavy, heavy stacks. Well, maybe not that heavy. But you do what you can do. I've got an extra unit here. I should probably shift over and try to see if I can hold that all. But I don't have a lot of troops to hold against this many Austrians come crashing through. At the end of turn stuff to take care of. Haven't done any of that, but I don't know that there's much I need to do. Can't rally. I'm not going to want to reserve, so I can move Nappy a little bit. He's kind of cool because he subtracts 2 from my command rating. So if I want, probably, I've got 3 orders. See, it's kind of nice to have that artillery barrage in there too. So I might not, yeah, no, it doesn't make a difference. I only have 2 commands. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to push Napoleon somewhere where he can, he likes being in this house, where he can reach the cav. There's some reason for that, but there really isn't at this point. And we move into whatever the next turn is. I can't read because there's all kind of counters on top. Absolutely terrible things are happening here to the French. First of all, probably because I wrongly attributed this to Lon. This is actually Massena's corps. 4th Corps in the last game was under Soule. I don't know if Lon was in charge of the 2nd Corps. Not sure how stable those corps assignments were, to tell you the truth. And I can't answer it here. I could look at the other counters. But anyway, somewhat irrelevant. I got the attack off here with both units this time, not the units that withdrew. They're back, that were disordered last time. They moved back here. I shifted other units in after a successful command roll. Successful engagement, they both went in, and they both went back out. And that just does not look pleasant. Kind of no matter how I turn this unit, he's going to be exposed. He's outside the village. He got flung back. There was nowhere for him to retreat, because I had filled this space. And the French hold on Aspern looks really questionable. This could be over very quickly. And with some Austrian activity pushed in, destroyed actually that whole stack here. Then the 1st Corps pushed up into place, and we've got reinforcements swinging onto the board. Massena got the next activation. He managed to rally some of these units here. Otherwise, just getting things into command again because the cav got pushed out of the way. Okay, Bellegarde's 1st Corps went pushed down here in the... but also I launched an attack with Charles against this space. This guy's facing the wrong way. He had to face... Shit. It's early in the morning and I can't quite manipulate things as well as later in the day. He had to face that way and take that risk that he's going to get turned on. He failed to take this hex. The cav ran away from him. Now, in this case, I think I learned I've been misplaying a role. Berg's not good at nailing everything down. He doesn't really define what a retreat cohesion check specifically says, but it seems to say here when it's called where the affected units undergo a cohesion check. Sounds like one cohesion check for all the units, kind of like the commitment check. But in the rules on Charles, if the cohesion die roll for any unit in that stack, that makes me believe that you're supposed to roll individually per unit in the stack. In the rules itself, that's not even mentioned. This is really the defining rule for the retreat cohesion checks. So, you know, I've been interpreting it incorrectly. I think what that's created is probably overall an advantage for the retreater or for the loser in combats. And God, I hate those helicopters. The airplanes are no big deal. The helicopters fly right over. Usually there's one in the morning, one in the afternoon. There's been about 3 this morning. So normally whoever loses the battle, either, or the way I've been playing it, either falls back entirely and is a cohesive unit, or stands there. But now we've got things like, you know, this 9 strength points that was stiffening my unit with a low morale is now not going to be part of that unit anymore. And that's going to cause some potential problems. You know, I could see it going either way. That's really, really yellow today. Is the lighting or something? Maybe something's wrong with the camera. Couple of activations on these guys. Now they have to move kind of slowly because they've already started deploying. Yeah, and they don't have. I didn't want to roll for orders. Then Liechtenstein, who had gotten orders before and had kind of pushed into place, is now. He thrust forward, but the light cav ran away. He's got heavies all here. It's kind of funny. The heavy cav's facing the light in both places. Really wondering about that yellowing. The yellowing is because of the sun. It's this tremendously orangish color right now, and it just doesn't look quite that yellow. Not on the camera though. So something Hip Shop mentioned was that all the video cameras have a tendency to yellow more than his cell phone camera. Well, this certainly seems to bring it out even to my eyes. Now, I moved the advanced guard forward, and I'm being very slow here in terms of describing things because I just ran into something else that I haven't noticed before. So Jaegers are not well defined in the rules, but every now and then it says, oh, so-and-so claims it's a Jaeger, but it isn't, or something along those lines. Well, I haven't been sure what's a Jaeger and what's not. I've been kind of going with the one-sided units, or things that said they're Jaegers that don't say they're not in the scenario. But I think it's this little green stripe here and the different image. It's, again, not clearly stated in the rules, and this thing doesn't say it's a Jaeger, but it sure looks like one with that high firepower rating and the tiny size and everything. Anyway. Luckily for it, it's the 3rd unit of this command. Pretty much any small units that I have on the board, I have a couple of them stacked here, I think are Jaegers. These guys actually say they are, I believe. No, they say they're Uhlans. Oh no, that's the commander. Does that say anything about Jaeger? Nope. You know, but it's not like I haven't gotten a feel for a battle that felt like it went well in terms of Austerlitz. And I think this one also feels okay. Castiglione, trying to pronounce it correctly. Somebody pointed it out to me, and I'm so embarrassed because, you know, I have that GL in my name. And he's probably thinking it should be more y, but no, it does have a little bit of that in it. It's just the sound of it. It has some G in it, and if I'm speaking to an English-speaking audience, or if I'm not used to pretending I'm Italian, I'm gonna just say "gle," right? Okay. Anyway, one word, and that's a lot better. Here's the sunlight. It's kind of gotten better anyway. So, okay. What is this? Hiller? Yeah, this is Hiller's Corps. Marched in, launched an attack only from this hex, getting a slight advantage from the flank, but ended up just disordering himself. It's tough to fight those big French units in a town. I mean, this is not just a blowout. They do have some capability of defending themselves. Over here, Bessier, who has the heavy, I think this is actually like guard cav or something. The heavy cav here, no, it's some Austrian guards are committed. He has the heavy cav, chased off the lights, and then beat up on this poor Jaeger. I may actually have to use the charge to have a chance of stopping this. This is a pretty big unit, and if I fight it directly, I'm probably just going to disorder. So I'm beginning to see where maybe launching charges might work, or might be necessary, but I'm kind of afraid to, just because of the disadvantage of them being able to go into square easily. But we'll actually see that kind of maneuvering happening, which we haven't seen in Austerlitz. We haven't seen me go to full charge mode. Anyway, we're on to the next turn. Got the marker here. This is where the bridge starts being checked for death. We got a whole bunch more Austrians coming in. And the next turn opens up with the French getting the initiative. The Austrians have switched have switched from Bellegarde, which is right under Charles, and I have a good chance of activating that, I think. I didn't check the chits to see if he's particularly effective, but I at least have the bonus on him to getting Hohenzollern moving to try to put pressure maybe on the back end of Essling here, because the advance guard's not doing very well, and in fact Bessier was able to rout those Jaegers. There just aren't very many units, so I can't protect the flank very well. And I hit here with that heavy cav. Not a charge, just a flank hit. I had a +1. I ended up knocking the big infantry of the guard out. Okay, let's see. Bessier busted up the rest of the advanced guard infantry. Now, one of them recovered a little later, but... and then we had a couple of action, and that's the action I'm not going to mention. A couple of actions by Bellegarde, basically to pull back, start recovering. You can see it didn't really take too well. One unit there. I think there's a unit under Charles that's not healed. But these guys are marching forward at a good pace there. Ooh, so Liechtenstein had 2 actions. You can see he's not in great shape after hitting something. I don't remember when that happened. I don't know why that's disordered. It moved forward disordered instead of... Oh, it got hit by artillery fire, and Massena got an action just now. And I've pretty much pushed Massena's cav out of the way, which actually helped Massena when his activation came. Everything was in command. Rallied here. Now, this is where this is getting stupid. So, not only are there more die rolls for the Czechs, the game is getting much, much more complicated by the fact that this particular scenario talks about individual, or implies that there's individual die rolls for morale checks whenever you make a cohesion check for retreat, or presumably artillery fire or whatever. The way I was doing it was great. You roll 1 die, boom, you know. Sometimes you worry only about the top unit, but it's just 1 die roll. And it made everything much, much easier. Usually the whole stack went or the whole stack stayed. Now I've got units mixed in to stacks where 1 unit's not rallied, it's disorganized, and I've got no idea whether or not it can attack success. You know, whether a stack's safe. Here's one. So this unit's disorganized. It's second in the stack. You know, how am I going to remember that that's got to rally? And actually, I just had a Messina action and I didn't move it and I forgot to try to rally it. And I've got no idea, you know. This is increasing the cranky factor for the game quite a bit to the point where it's no longer fun, I think. I may just reverse it and go back to how I was playing because I was enjoying that just fine. It was giving me reasonable results. The only thing it doesn't give is Charles is less likely to get killed. And I'm not sure it really should matter how many units he's stacked with, which is really the effect. The more units he's stacked with, the more likely he's to be killed. And the hell with it. I'm making up my rules changes as I go. Because quite honestly, this game is too light to be keeping track of that level of detail. And once you start throwing that level of detail in, you're making what was kind of a fun, light, slightly above the Napoleon at Waterloo system to something that's becoming a tedious chore for what it gives. The sling of Austrians, first the 4th Corps comes on the map. I allowed these guys to do their initial movement on using the reinforcement because they came from different hexes from this force. This force just pounds right in. Advanced Guard rallied again. Still facing the wrong way. But either move or rally. And then Hiller here had some trouble. You can see some of his more units are disordered. That came from an artillery blast. They fired in, got driven back, or got damaged and pulled back. And largely trying to just kind of pin down the French from that side. If they put too weak a defense, I'll go in. But I'm counting more on making the attacks from this direction and maybe over here. Not quite sure which way the 2nd Corps is going to go, whether it's going to swing after Essling or just keep pounding into Aspern. And we finish up the turn with a series of Austrian activations. 2nd Corps, I am definitely going after Essling with this because I've got this force, which is to reinforce the rest of the 1st Corps. Hiller actually succeeded at making an attack, but was stopped by the artillery. And then, yeah, the 1st Corps moved. Right? They moved, or no, the 2nd Corps moved twice, actually, slowly inching its way up. A lot of stuff forgetting to do the bridge roll. It's a 0-1. Okay, we have no problem there, and we'll just push this forward another turn. And that's not for destruction, that's just for damage. Messina went first. I'm not making any attacks, but I may want to move that out. But I am repositioning a little bit, trying to get a better defensive line here. I just don't have enough troops to handle everything, though. So that's going to be rough. Okay, a number of things. First, Bellegarde and Charles launched an attack. Just one unit. They tried to do more, but didn't get in there, and it didn't work. Advanced Guard rallied this guy and pulled back behind here, and then we have what is this? Roseburg's 4th Corps launched an attack and destroyed some cav. And you could say various things here. Basically, they're able to outmaneuver just because of the huge preponderance of the amount of forces they were able to have. They were able to overwhelm coming from multiple directions. And I'm not too sad with that. Actually, it was only one unit that managed to make the attack from here straight on. He just got a good roll, and there was nowhere it could retreat to because this would have been overstacked. Rosenberg finishes off the rest of that heavy cav. And Messina gets an action, fires some artillery, but mainly is just trying to position his units. It looks pretty damn hopeless for the French, except for one thing. These are really potent defensive positions. But the center, with that ridge, that's just 1 point, I think. It's just not that impressive. That's 2 points for shock. That's kind of nice. string of Austrian commands in the round. First, the advanced guard rallied. And my camera's, I'm getting kind of used to, I think it's broken enough that I can use it. 6th Corps here, Hiller shifted around a little bit. They're not really able to do anything. You can see still a routed unit. Then we go to Liechtenstein, who pulls back a little bit, still engaging in artillery fire, but he's trying to make way for these orange guys who are Hohenzollern. And finally, Bellegarde's Corps goes. And Bellegarde's is interesting. I didn't take a roll because I wanted to move these guys up, but that doesn't really matter. But for the rest of the command, it had a lot of rallying to do, so I didn't really want to launch an attack. But I noticed something. There's some really lousy units in here. Big lousy units, too. This is just a 6. But here's a 9 with a 2 morale, or cohesion, quality, or whatever. But that's kind of the saving grace for the French, is that the Austrians trying to rally their units are having a hell of a hard time. Finish up with a few more actions. Liechtenstein got a couple. I don't know where I fell in here. Hiller got another one. No good effect there. Liechtenstein's allowed him to rally. I missed those units, but they did it at the end of the turn instead. They got a couple of rally shots. The artillery barrage. I think we've got some damage. Liechtenstein got hit, but I don't know if that was that. I think so. And then the big 2nd Corps, and we got a kind of a traffic jam here with the 1st and 2nd kind of colliding. I got most of the 2nd through. I'm planning on hitting Essling up there. And that's going to pull us in to a little after 5 p.m. I'm going to put this up, though, as the 4:30 turn.